Well, hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Well, guys, we have a very special guest here today, and I am looking forward to an awesome conversation. But before we bring her on, I just want to remind everyone that on Tuesdays, this is not the first stream of the day I do. It is, or the only stream, rather. This is but the first stream of the day I do. And I just want to remind everyone that I will be live with Joshua tonight at 9:30 for Nothing Remotely Controversial. We are going to be looking at the birth chart of the United States in celebration of the 4th of July. We might even be talking about the future of how Milo Yiannopoulos' internship is going to work out with Marjorie Taylor Greene, because I will tell you, I was just on the phone with Joshua for 2 hours earlier today. Joshua absolutely has thoughts about that. And of course, we will be taking your questions. Nothing Remotely Controversial is a really fun show that Joshua and I do every Tuesday night at 9:30, where we talk about the news and what's going on in the world. And Joshua uses his psychic powers, because he is a professional psychic, to help us peer beneath the surface and make predictions about what's going to happen. And even if you don't believe in psychics, I think it's a really fun show. And of course, we got actually a whole bunch of streams coming up this week that I want to let you guys know about. Tomorrow, we have what is going to be the next in my new Disenrage series. And the Disenrage series is a series of conversations I'm going to be doing about just the human experience, different perspectives of the world, different things people see and involve themselves in. And I'm actually really looking forward to the chat I have tomorrow scheduled. Magister Bill M is going to join us, and he is actually a priest in the Church of Satan. And I really am interested in this because I want to find out what it actually means to be in the Church of Satan. What do they believe? What are their rituals like? What do they do? Bill is actually the host of one of the longest running Satan podcasts on the internet, and he is going to join us for a chat about that. That's going to be a really great stream tomorrow. Then on Thursday, for all you libertarians, Dennis Pratt is going to be in the house, and Dennis is bringing about 86 people with him. Okay, that might be a slight exaggeration, but not a lot of an exaggeration. Dennis is bringing a whole bunch of people with him, and we are going to do a recap of PorkFest, the ultimate libertarian festival, the best festival that ever was. And I'm really looking forward to that on Thursday at 5 p.m. with Dennis. And then on Friday, of course, on Fridays, we go over to my second channel, youtube.com/activelyunwoke, for a happy hour. But before we do that, Joshua will actually be joining us for another stream on Fridays, but we're not going to do any psychicking on this stream. I want to talk to Joshua about what it's like to be a psychic. What is his process for being a psychic? How does one go about becoming a professional psychic? And what is it like for him when he's communicating with spirit? I think that's going to be a fascinating conversation, and that's going to be at 2 p.m. on Friday on this channel. That way we can get done in time for happy hour, so we can go over to my other channel at 5 o'clock and do that. Now, of course, guys, if you would like to support the work I'm doing, the very best way you can do that is by becoming a supporter in my locals community. Fun fact, the wonderful guest I have today is actually a member of my locals community, and she does come to my community Zoom calls. She's a very regular on the community Zoom. She tells us all about what's going on and talks about life and all sorts of things with us. We do community Zoom calls on Mondays at 7 p.m. on my channel and on Wednesdays at noon. And so if you become a supporter today in my locals, you can get access to tomorrow's community Zoom call, which will be a really great conversation. These are private, unrecorded calls, just with normal people talking about normal things, with no judgment, no censorship, no any of that. So how you do that is you head over to kb.locals.com/support. And you sign up for $5 a month or more if you want to. You can also sign up for $50 a year, which will give you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift, and all of that helps keep this channel alive. It helps support the work I'm doing. It helps give me time to bring all these amazing guests on my channel that I'm going to be booking coming up. And I already have next week booked out too. So if you guys have any sort of guests that you would like me to talk to on the channel, please leave a comment and let me know. But definitely support in locals as well, so that I can keep doing this instead of, doing a real job or anything like that. I also wanted to let you guys know this is actually really relevant to our chat today, because I do feature the story of our guest in my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. And what I noticed today when I brought this up is my book's on sale. And it's not just my book. It's like all these hardcover books. You can get Woke Inc. is on sale. Glenn Beck's book, The Great Reset, is on sale. So apparently Amazon is having a hardcover book sale. So if you thought $27 was just too much to pay for my hardcover book, well, guess what? Right now on Amazon, you can get it for $15. So great time to buy the hardcover version of the book if you have not already. And guess what? If you become an annual supporter in my locals for that $50, you can request a customized autographed book plate from me that I will sign to you. I will write a little message. I will send it to you in the mail, and then you can put it in your hardcover copy of Actively Unwoke, and it's just like having an autographed book. We also have the Kindle version and the audio version, which was read by me. A little bit against my will, but sometimes life just works out that way. And I think it turned out great. I'm really proud of it, and I hope you guys love it too. All right, Incognito says, Miss Gabs in the house. Let's do this, ladies. I am so excited to have my guest today on the channel. It is the one, the only Gabrielle Clark. Gabrielle Clark is a mom and an activist that filed the first ever lawsuit against schools that have critical race theory in schools. Her son was basically, the school tried to force him to admit he was an oppressor in order to graduate. They sued. The case is still pending, and it really is one of those cases that it is so important to support this case, guys. This case could lead to a precedent setting judgment, not only against critical race theory in schools, but that also applies to social emotional learning in schools. This is one of the most important things that we can support in the unwoke space today. If you can donate to keep this case going, because it is not cheap to fight a case that will probably ultimately end up in the Supreme Court. It's about $500,000 in order to be able to do that. Even if you're completely in the right, we need to make sure that we are supporting Gabs and her family in every way that we can to get this case across the finish line, to get that legal judgment. They already have a statement from a judge saying that this case will be successful if they're able to see it through to its conclusion. So we know it's there. It's like we can see the light at the end of our tunnel, and all we need to do is fund it. So if you can donate today to help support Gabs' case, I have pinned the link to this page. It's givesendgo.com/support the Clarks. It's at the top of the chat. There is also a link in the description below. And if you want to visit the page and learn more about the case and see the evidence and all of that, you're welcome to do that. But please make a donation. $5, $10, $100, $500, whatever you can do. And we're going to be talking about today how hard it is to raise money for things like this, and how, well, the communities that you think would support something like this just don't always show up in the way that you want them to. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with my friend and, a hero of mine. And I mean that, I'm not being hyperbolic. Gabrielle Clark, welcome to the channel. I'm so happy to have you back.
Thank you for having me, Carlin. It's always fun to come on your show, even when the topic isn't that fun.
Well, I think the topic, I think it's, maybe not the most fun topic we've ever talked about, but I think today is a really important topic. And this is something that you've talked about privately. It's something that I've talked about publicly on the channel and on the Twitters many times, which is, it is extremely difficult to be an unwoke activist, particularly when you're not affiliated with any one of these major organizations like a fair or anything like that. And it's like, I think it's, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I have found it to be extremely frustrating to watch which people in the anti-CRT space actually get the support and what they don't do with that support. And, people like you're out there fighting every single day. You are helping parents every single day. And I don't think that you really get the support that you deserve and is necessary to see this case through. So maybe we can just start, for people who might be new to you or new to this. Can you give us maybe a brief overview of how did you was this part of your life plan to end up as a civil rights activist? How did you end up in this position?
No, no. And it's bizarre. It's surreal um, being a civil rights activist. It doesn't even feel real to say that. But my son was being discriminated against at school. He was given assignments and class materials that were about intersectionality and that sort of thing. He was asked to list his identities and attach signifiers to those identities. And since I'm biracial, my mom is Black and my dad is white, and his father, my late husband, was white. My son William is 3/4 white. So he was asked to list his race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic level, disabilities, those kinds of things. And he was only given two identifiers. One was oppressor, and one was or privileged, and the other was oppressed. So you can only be privileged or oppressed. And in some of that materials, it talked about white dominance and white supremacy and all of those things. So because I've raised my kids with a Judeo-Christian background, we are atheists, but we still observe Judeo-Christian values. One of the things that it talked about in those materials was that he was to unlearn those things. So, I mean, he was supposed to say that he's a white male Christian, Christian values oppressor,
Mhm.
able-bodied oppressor, able-bodied privileged person, in America. When we, at the time, I was recovering from a disability myself where I was in a wheelchair for several years. So we lost everything and we were living in a motel in Las Vegas. And William was sleeping on a mat on the floor, not a mattress, a mat on the floor of a dirty hotel, a dirty motel in Vegas. And he's privileged. You're not going to do that to my kid. So we did everything we could to try to convince the school to let him out of that class. And when they refused, we had no other choice but to file a lawsuit. And we did in December of 2020. And by April, they'd had a change of heart. So they allowed William to opt out of that class. They expunged his record of any bad grades, and he was able to graduate. Now, prior to that, they were telling us that he would not graduate as retaliation for not completing the course. So, we fought. We didn't just allow it to happen. You know, he could have put his head down and just answered the questions, and he could have even lied, and they wouldn't have known the difference. But he wasn't going to do that, and I wasn't going to ask him to do that. So we had no choice but to fight. That's the thing that a lot of people um, in America don't seem to understand is that you you don't have to do this. You don't have to accept it,
Mhm.
and you can fight back, and it's not easy. But who said it was going to be?
Yeah. So nothing worth doing is ever easy, is it?
No, no, it isn't.
But it could be a little bit easier.
It could be a little bit easier. I mean, you know, in this situation, um, we've had to sacrifice quite a lot. During the time that I was fighting and I was speaking out and I was going all over the country and talking to people. During that time, my daughter was being socially transitioned into thinking she was a boy. And so in the middle of all of this madness, I had that was going on with my daughter. And so ultimately I had to stop and recapture my daughter. And
Mhm.
during that time, I wrote down the steps that I took to bring her back from transgenderism.
Mhm. And this is something that hasn't been as well talked about with what's going on with you and your family. I mean, every time you've been on the channel, we've been focusing mostly on William's case, but you are literally one of the only people, if not the only person in the country that has written, well, I'm going to call it a manual for what to do when a school socially transitions your child without telling you, and how do you kind of bring them back and rectify what the school's done.
Yeah, I mean, we have not even been able to establish that as a fact. But I know that there were things going on at her school, because she as part of the social emotional learning, she was
Mhm.
seeing a therapist, and these things weren't happening before she went to that school. And during the time that she was at that school, there was a lot of trans talk, a lot of non-binary stuff in the beginning, and there was a lot of turmoil in her, just in herself, like just against herself. It was always something. She was getting really bad acne because the masks were making a lot of children have acne and cheilitis, angular cheilitis around their mouth. I found that out from a dentist.
Hmm.
But there were things that were happening at the school. And when during over the course of the summer, we came here to Houston, where we live now, for a visit to visit our family. And she changed back into the sweet, kind person that she had been before all of this. And so at that time, I realized there's something wrong here. And when it was time for her to go back to school, that's when I saw the extreme change in her personality that was very, very destructive for her. And it was destructive for our family. And when I realized that this was what was it was it wasn't just social media, it wasn't just her friends, but it was the school as well.
Hmm.
And by Thanksgiving, I did not want her to go back to school. And by Christmas, we I unenrolled her and we moved to Texas. We moved back home to Houston, Texas, where I'm from.
Hmm. And in the midst of all of this, you have been just one of the powerhouses in the unwoke space, the anti-CRT space. I mean, you've been out there every single day. Like you talk to everyone, you help parents all the time trying to explain what's going on. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the activism that you've been engaged in over the past couple of years?
Well, originally, it was just the CRT, because that was what was being pushed the most in the beginning. And it, like I said, that was with my son. But my son didn't want to answer the gender identity questions, and he did not want to talk about his sexual orientation. Those were the questions that he didn't want to have answered. He didn't want to answer them. I did not even ask him those questions because it's none of my business. He'll
Hmm.
tell me when he's ready. So that aspect of the gender ideology stuff came later. But I did spend quite a lot of time with No Left Turn in Education, working with them and working with parents that would come to us. I saw Dr. Elena Fishbein on Tucker Carlson, and our first lawyer, John O'Brien, he saw her on Tucker Carlson as well. And I think that that was very fortuitous, us being able to connect with each other through Dr. Fishbein. Um, and when the two of us went on Tucker Carlson, we both thanked him for having his show, because he was the catalyst for us being able to find one another. Had we not seen each other had we not seen Dr. Fishbein on his show, we might not have connected. But going into Zooms and people reaching out to us in emails and through our DMs on Twitter and Facebook, our Facebook pages and stuff like that, with No Left Turn in Education. That was how I was able to, activate parents. One of the hardest parts of all of this is the parents being afraid and being just paralyzed with fear, and not doing anything about their situation because they're too afraid of the repercussions of what's going to come if they speak out. But most parents have the same case that we have. Most parents, if you have a child in school, your child has been given a survey asking these things, and worse. Some of them are worse, and not many people are fighting back because it's terrifying. It
Hmm.
is. It's terrifying, and it is costly, and it's all encompassing. I mean, there you spend days and weeks of worrying about the outcome. of this situation because it's not easy, and it's not easy for anyone involved.
Mhm.
So parents are afraid. And what I've been doing over the course of the last 2 years is to tell parents that they don't have to be afraid. You know, our federal government is supposed to be afraid of us, not the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what, getting kind of to the crux of what I wanted to talk about, because I think that, a lot of people who, watch shows like this, or they're on Twitter and they're following what's going on in the schools, it can be easy to think that activism comes from like a major organization, or activism might come from the Republican Party, or it might come from, media outlets like the Post Millennial or any of these things. And really, like, the most effective activism in terms of fighting back in the schools, at least in my opinion, is by reaching out to people in the real world, getting them to go to school board meetings, getting them to do FOIA requests, getting them to do kind of all the boring stuff that actually makes them more visible in their own little small communities, not in the big stuff, or not on Twitter or any of that. And I think that, for people like you and people like me that are kind of trying to do stuff in the real world, it can sometimes be incredibly frustrating with the well, I don't want to care, I'll say lack of support that we might get from places that we would expect would support us. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for everybody that I've spoken with, one of the first questions is well, isn't so and so going to no, they're not, honey.
No, they're
Isn't
not.
so and so going to do something, or this person is doing something, or that person is doing something? No.
No.
You don't, when we think about who is supposed to handle, quote unquote, handle this stuff, that would have been places, that would have been organizations like the ACLU, but they're captured. So who do you go to when everything is captured? You go to the people, and the people are the ones who are supposed to fight back. Because unfortunately, you know, this culture war is not part of our government. This whole thing, what we're doing in fighting back against indoctrination, fighting it back um, against the tyranny. It's not something that can be legislated. It's not something that can be that we can affect policy over. This is something that has to start with ourselves, and we have to understand. Each person has to understand that they have to be actively unwoke and doing their part. And if that means that you're going to have to file a lawsuit to fight for your rights, then that's what you're going to have to do. A long time ago, we used to send people off to war to do that stuff. But what
Mhm.
happens when the war is at home? What happens when the people that you're fighting against are the people who are governing you, or the people who are supposed to be organizations that are supposed to be protecting you? You have to fight against them, and you have to do that starting within your own home, and activate yourself, and get out there and go to work, because the people who you think are there to help you, they are not.
Mhm.
There's all kinds of blue check influencers are following me, but they're not helping me.
Nope.
They're following me on Twitter to see what I'm going to do, but they're not following me. And I can tell you, I have gotten more questions from people like doctors and politicians about what to do. You're asking me what to do? Like, you don't know? That's terrifying. When I'm it, that's terrifying. You know, people are supposed to know their rights, and we're not supposed to rely on anyone else to come and save us. That's what part of what being an American is all about. And somehow the majority of us have forgotten that. And so we think that these people are coming to save us, and they're not. Your politicians aren't coming to save you. Your influencers are not coming to save you. It's not, there's not some organization that's there to protect you from this and that. They're not. We have we there are, public interest law firms and stuff like that that are there to help you, but they only go so far. We've had 3 public interest law firms helping us at any given time. We're still represented by a public interest law firm, Liberty Justice Center, and they're doing a great job. But ultimately they only do so much. The activism is me, and I don't have an assistant or any of that nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just me. It's just me going out there and talking to parents. It's just me going out there and standing in front of groups, and me making calls and FOIA requests and all of that stuff. Even when there is a group, that group is only limited, you know, because everybody that works in that group, they're all volunteers. Nobody is getting paid for this stuff. The most important things that are being done by volunteers, by people just like me who are working behind the scenes, people just like Nicole Salas or Billboard Chris. Those are the kinds of people um, who are really making real changes and reaching out into culture. You know, of course, there are a lot of other people who are doing really great work and they're funded, but the ultimate um, grunt work, is going to be done by us, by the people. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not fun, and it's not easy, it's not sexy either. There's
No.
nothing sexy about having to, go through, emails and reading all the emails of some school board member and reading how much they hate you and how much they're trying to ruin you and your children. That is it's a heavy weight to carry. But I'm doing the grunt work because it's necessary. Everybody should be.
Yeah. And I want to hit on that point. Like everyone who cares about these issues should be pitching into this in some way. And that was part of the reason why I wrote my book. Was I wanted to give people options for different ways they could participate, they could support, even if it's just you talk to a couple of parents in your community, or you watch the school board meetings, or you send a FOIA request, or you make a donation to your lawsuit to help out, or you share information about the lawsuit. There are all sorts of little ways that the average person can step up, because I think that I think that especially in this space, a lot of times people think that these big organizations are going to step up and support you and step up and do the right thing. And then you come to find out that all these blue check influencers are just really, quite frankly, and I'm not going to name names, but I think everyone who watches my channel regularly knows who I'm talking about, Matt Walsh. Like I think you think all these blue check influencers are going to step up and do something, and what they're really much more interested in is playing pranks on politicians, to own the libs, to get on Tucker Carlson for 15 minutes. And then the minute that you give them an opportunity to do the right thing and to contribute or even just share information about your lawsuit, they go completely silent and
Mhm.
pretend they don't know you, even if they're following you and they know what's going on. Am I right about that?
Yes, that is right. I mean, you know, there's you can always tell who is there to fix the problem and who's there to promote the problem. You know, if somebody is really really trying to fix the problem, then they're not going to push any information by the wayside. I mean, there are I've got a bunch of blue checks following me, a bunch of them, but I've never been on any of their shows. You know what I mean? They even talked about my case, but they didn't have me on their show. I mean, and there's all kinds of things that people can do to support, and that are in positions of power that they can, you know. And unfortunately, part of our society does mean that some people have a bigger platform than others. I built the platform that I have by reaching out to people who care And when I saw that the people that I was reaching out to, there were people, I mean, lots of people. I was reaching out to them. They have all my information, but they still never made an attempt to help. They're not interested in helping fix the problem. They're interested in having a good guest on their show. They're interested in having the PhDs and the influencers and the famous people and stuff like that on their show to get good ratings and to get good clicks and engagement. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not in particular. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, if you're not going to fix the problem, then how are you helping? How does that help? And I think that is one of the most frustrating aspects of all of this for me, is that, I don't get invited to the big conferences to speak. I don't get all of that sort of stuff, even though you can't get the experience that I have, because these people have never been through it. They don't know what it's like. They don't know what they're looking for if it happens to them. So they can't even tell the people who it's affecting what is happening to them. When I talked about parallel language messaging, there were a few people who were very interested in that, because that was one of the things that I've been teaching parents how to recognize, how to read it. People like James Lindsay gave us the language, but James Lindsay is a genius. Helen Pluckrose is a genius. Mm-hmm. Everybody can't interpret all of their, stuff. It wasn't easy for me to do it. And I have a rudimentary understanding of a lot of it. But, there were things that we were able to do to help parents to understand what's going on a whole lot better. And parallel language messaging was one of the things that I was able to explain to parents. And they were able to recognize it when it was happening to them, so that they could do something about it. Those are the kinds of things that you don't get when you talk to a big influencer, when you engage with some of those people. Those are the things that you're not going to get. So every time resources are sent to those kinds of people, you really do need to understand you're paying for entertainment.
Yes.
You're not paying for solutions.
Mm-hmm. I put out a tweet, I think maybe a week and a half ago, where I said an activist is someone who is committed to making change in the real world. An entertainer is someone who is pretending to be an activist so that they can make money. And a grifter is someone who will say anything they need to, even if they don't believe it, to make money. And I do think that some of these people who I will call entertainers, I don't think they necessarily disbelieve what they're saying. I think that they recognize that there's a problem, but the problem is that they have no desire to fix the problem. The only thing they want to do is use the problem to make money and maintain their status and get more subscribers on their website and get more clicks and get more shares and get on Tucker Carlson and all that. And I think that it's really hard for just average normal people who, let's be honest, like if you're working a job and you're coming home at the end of the night and you just want to watch YouTube or something else, you are doing it for entertainment. You are.
Right.
You're doing it to, I don't know why people watch the news to relax, but some people do that. And it's like, I think it's difficult for the average person to understand that the people that they're watching with these beautiful studios and everything is like gloriously produced, they're entertainers. They are not, they might be telling you about the problem, but that doesn't mean they're doing anything of substance to actually fix the problem. Am I right?
That is true. And I mean, what's so funny about that is, as a society, we think that the people who are on TV or the people who are being spotlighted, they're all part of the entertainment community. I remember when I was on American Thought Leaders, there was there was this guy who sent a tweet to Yanya Kellick, and he was telling Yanya Kellick about how terrible my lighting was.
Oh gosh.
He was telling Yanya Kellick about how terrible my lighting was. Now, At the time that that was going on, I was visiting one of my aunts who didn't have any furniture, and I was sleeping on the floor in her living room because she didn't have any furniture. And I was at my aunt's house because my mother had just died. And so we were handling my mother's funeral and taking care of her house and all of that stuff. And my aunt, she didn't have anything. She's just a poor lady. She didn't have anything. She's a senior citizen. She didn't even have a bed to sleep in herself. And so when I had to set up my iPad, my iPad that's practically, I think it's like 7 years old. I had to set that up with some books and a plant, and I took a picture of it because I thought it was interesting that here it is, I'm an American thought leader, but I had to set up my studio with a plant and a book, you know. And so I sent him a picture. I said, "Sir, I'm just a regular old person. There was no lighting. I had the window open and the light on. That was my lighting, and he was really apologetic because he didn't realize. But I think that that's what people need to understand. I've sacrificed a lot. I've slept on the floor quite a lot throughout this process because, whenever I go somewhere or I do something, there's not always a bed for me to sleep in. So I have to, make myself a little pallet on the floor and then go and speak to a crowd of people the next day. I mean, those are the kinds of things. And, if a good example of that has been very successful is Scott Pressler.
Yeah.
Now, he can tell you how many times he's had to sleep with a bunch of dogs or he's had to drive around in his beat up car, that kind of thing. That's what an activist life is like. But who do you think is making more of a dent in society? Somebody like Scott Pressler, who has registered 1 million voters, or Ronna McDaniel. I mean, who is really doing the most as far as fundamental changes and fundamental effort in making something happen? Making real things happen for real people. I would venture to guess that if Scott Pressler hadn't activated those 1 million people, those 1 million people wouldn't be available to help us in elections. Some of those people are people who had never voted before, even though they've been old enough to vote for decades. Those are the kinds of people that the grunts activists reach. The people who weren't activated before and weren't mobilizing before. So yeah, we're the people that do that kind of work. And a lot of people, when they sit down at night to watch television and they turn on the TV and they see the well-pressed suits and everybody is speaking so well, and they all have the 3 letters behind their name. They've all got more degrees than a thermometer, but they can't tell you dingly dang about what has happened in the classroom. They can't tell you fuck all about what is going on at the pump. Those are the people. Those are the people who entertain you, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you can't take what they say as the gospel truth because they don't know what's really going on the ground. They don't know what it's really like for everyday average Americans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've thought often, what if the RNC dedicated resources A, to putting Scott Pressler on the payroll, but also B, assigning Scott Pressler to train 100 more people exactly like him. Like, there is only one Scott Pressler. What if the RNC actually invested some resources in training 1 or 2 Scott Presslers per state, and the impact that would make? And they don't do it. They just don't do it. And it's not that they don't have the money to do it. They raised tens of millions of dollars using Trump's name and saying, we're going to fight for election integrity and all that stuff. And we don't know what happened to that money. And it really, I'm just gonna be blunt, it pisses me off that people are sending in tens of millions of dollars to the RNC. There is no accounting for where that money is going. And people like Scott Pressler, who is out there every single day doing the work that they refuse to do without any acknowledgement from the RNC at all, are just left with nothing. And I get so frustrated in so many things. I get frustrated for Scott because he should have a lot more support than he does. I get frustrated in looking at how I think we are losing and are very close to irrevocably losing the culture war because they're not taking action. They're not training more people like Scott Pressler. And to be quite frank, I'm a little bit pissed off at people who are sending in those tens of millions of dollars to the RNC because they got a nice fancy email, but they refuse to donate to cases like yours. They refuse to donate to people like Scott directly. And it's really frustrating to me to watch this all play out and think, we have all the resources we need. The money is there. The people are there. The problem is the people are not giving the money to the people who are actually making the change.
We've all been lied to by our ruling class. That's all there is to that. We've all been lied to by our ruling class. I'm a lifelong conservative. I've never voted for a Democrat, but I can't say with any real certainty that the people who are running in, under the R are really have anything to do with my life and are going to exact any changes in my life that are going to make it any better. And I know this, because it has taken quite a lot of talking to, politicians and watching them kind of blow me off, to realize that they don't care about what's really going on in real Americans' lives. And all you have to do is go to a gas station to see that, or go to a grocery store to see that. We don't even have basic supplies and materials to build anymore because our supply chain is ridiculous. This whole thing. We have laws on the books that are supposed to protect our children from what I am fighting for. We have laws that are supposed to protect them, but do you think that any attorney general around this country is saying anything about it? No, they're not. And it's taken regular old people. And when I say regular old people, I don't just mean poor people or middle class people. I mean just regular old everyday people. Even people like Elon Musk realize there's something wrong here. And he's activated, and he put money into it, and not a little bit either. Even if he didn't put his own money into it, he put his name into it, and that's enough. So, everybody really does need to understand that you are going to have to find those people who could be institutions if they had the right help, because those are the people who are going to make it happen. The Scott Presslers of the world, the Elon Musks of the world. I got into an argument the other day with somebody who said that gave that same line and nonsense that Twitter is a private company and they can do whatever they want. Guess what? They're not a private company. And you know how we know that? Because Ron DeSantis said that they are investing in Twitter.
Yeah.
That makes it government funded. Whether you want to, whether you want to accept that as truth or not, that's it. Our government tells them what they can and can't say. So there's all kinds of things that we're not doing as citizens to earn our freedom. I talk to 2A advocates all the time because I am a member of the NRA, and I talk to 2A advocates all the time. And I say, well, when are y'all going to start helping us protect the 1A stuff? because I'm a free speech advocate first and foremost. I'm a free speech activist. And they say, well, 2A protects the 1A. What happens when the 2A is not protecting the 1A? What happens when the 1A is being violated all the time and nobody is doing anything about that? What do you think they're coming after next? If you can't activate yourself, or at the very least, put your money where your mouth is and start helping the people who are fighting financially, then you are actively not fixing the problem. You are an active uh sitter arounder. I don't know what else you call that. you are actively abandoning your own freedom. That's the long and short of it. We've had, Megan Kelly is following me on Twitter, and her children went through something similar to mine. She could have fought back, but she didn't.
She just left.
She moved.
Yeah.
She just moved. She just left it. She's powerful. She has all kinds of resources that she could have single-handedly fought this, but she didn't. And those are the kinds of people. I mean, there have been, hey, look, there have been people who have gone out of their way and done some real work to help us. Don't get me wrong. Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yes, Vivek is great.
Hey, look, if it wasn't for Vivek Ramaswamy, we wouldn't have made it that first 6 months. Okay, that's real, because he recognized the seriousness of the problem, and he did that. But there are other blue check influencers that follow me who wouldn't even so much as send me an encouraging DM. Those are the people who you look at every day, you watch them every day, you listen to them every day, and they are doing nothing to help you every single day.
I'm gonna give an example, so let's talk about Sebastian Gorka. Sebastian Gorka follows you on Twitter, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Sebastian Gorka used to follow me on Twitter up until when I went to war with Matt Walsh and the Daily Wire, because Matt Walsh raised over $100,000 for AOC's grandmother in a prank in a matter of days. And I said, okay, well, you guys are playing pranks. Can we actually try to raise money for something real? And I basically started holy hellfire on Twitter promoting your lawsuit. And it worked out great. I think we raised over like $33,000 in that single week, which was awesome. But in the midst of my tweeting holy hell about basically going after all the Daily Wire influencers and saying, you guys are donating $500 to this prank, I will match any $500 donation that you guys make to supporting Gabrielle Clark's case. Not a single blue check from the Daily Wire has ever made a single donation to her case, although we all know they can afford it. And I was willing to match it. And I'm just like, spoiler alert, guys, I don't necessarily have $500 sitting around for every single person at the Daily Wire, but I was willing to do it anyway. And I ended up donating over $1,000 to your case just to try to like incentivize other people to do it that week. But in the midst of my Twitter storm, I tweeted I replied to Sebastian Gorka saying something like, why are you supporting a prank on AOC's grandmother and you're not supporting this? Sebastian Gorka DM'd me his phone number, demanded I call him so that he could yell at me for daring to send him a tweet that he didn't like. And he said, I was going to have you on my show, but now I never will. And Gabs, I'm not kidding you. And this might not be like good information. I'm like 85% sure he was confusing me with you. I'm pretty sure he thought I was you.
You know what? He asked me for my phone number and my email address. I gave it to him, but I never heard anything. And this was long before that stuff you did, Carla.
Yeah.
But, at that time, I wasn't even mad about it because I was just like, you know what? That there are people right now who I've spoken with who are blue checks that are following me, and they have a show and they still have never had me on their show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, and I don't really necessarily care about that, but it does help. It does help, the funding aspect. And now I'm funding the case. The case is it's in good hands with Liberty Justice Center. So the funding aspect, they're handling the legal aspect. But I didn't always have a free lawyer, and I still owe that lawyer quite a bit of money. And now, because I'm pretty much the only person who is literally writing the book on how to recapture your children from transgenderism, you know, um, I can't eat patriotism.
Yeah.
I can't fill my gas tank up with patriotism. I can't go to the grocery store and say, no, 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 it's okay. I'm going to walk out with these groceries because patriotism. That's not how that is going to work. And that's the stuff that I've got plenty of patriotism, and I love the kids. But when it comes down to really actively working and doing something that is going to produce an actual result, there's a fundamental, truth. It takes some money. And one of the things that so many conservatives, and I say conservatives because the left does this. The left will show up for the worst criminal in the world and go and bail them out of jail when they, riot or whatever. They'll show up for their people. If I go to a school board and I start turning it up at a school board, you think that somebody's coming to bail me out of jail? No. I'm just gonna sit there until they release me. You know, that's why it's so hard to be an activist as a conservative, because conservatives don't activate. I mean, and if you don't believe that, think about January 6th. All of those people who had been just kicked to the curb by the GOP.
Yep.
The GOP could raise hell about that. They could fix that for those people. They could have hired them all lawyers. They could do all kinds of things, but they left them high and dry. And we know that there were issues with that. We know that there was a mess with that, and that it's wrong. And some of the people were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Some of the people were falsely accused. All of it. We've had how many people have died since then? One of them committing suicide. I mean, because this is what we're up against, and our own people won't help us because what? Grifting, honey. If you want to see, look at this right here. You see that? That's a hole in my wall. There ain't no part. There ain't no part of my life that is. There's no living. We're not living large over here. Okay. I sleep in the same room with my daughter. I drive a 20-year-old beat up car. There's no, every single thing that I do goes in back into the fight. I've used my own money to go to travel to New York to have a protest in Central Park against gender ideology. And we were not well received. Let me just please tell you, we were in the belly of the beast for sure. Those are the kinds of things that you're not going to get from your influencers or your GOP. You're not going to get that stuff. Yeah, Matt Walsh, he made the movie. It was funny. I liked it. But you know what? I cried after, because some of the things that were happening to him are happening to parents all over the place. And while he got to laugh afterwards, those people's kids still got their breasts cut off. They still had to go through the tumultuous experience of not knowing who they are, being disembodied, all of that stuff. So when, he can laugh about it because it's not happening to him. He can be make make a funny silly movie about or a funny silly video about going and renting somebody's basement so he could be part of the school board, so he could go and do hey, look, guess how many school board meetings I've been to?
A lot more than Matt Walsh.
I mean, and it's hostile. There's I'm not getting the accolades and the clapping and all of that stuff. Guess how many swim meets Jennifer Thomas has been to before she got to stand on the steps in Pennsylvania, in Hartford, Pennsylvania. Harrisburg, is that what? I can't even remember. The capital of Pennsylvania, to talk about how she saved women's sports. There were no blue check influencers ready to give her a bunch of money for that. She went and did that herself. In her little car, she travels all over the country in her car to go to different and hold protests all over the country to save women's sports. Her and a handful of other, radical feminists. That's the realization that everybody needs to come to. The people you see on TV, some of them are really doing a huge amount of work. But the people you don't see, that are really making the huge sacrifices, those are the people who are getting the most done. When you talk about, I mean, somebody is mentioning Sloan Rockmuth. Sloan Rockmuth, she is one of them. They're suing her. The GOP is suing her.
I didn't know that. What are they suing her for?
Oh, I can't even remember, but in North Carolina, the GOP is captured.
Yeah.
We're this ain't you think that being a conservative protects you from some things. I was talking to a state representative in Nevada for months before I realized that she also was captured.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she was promoting school choice, which is a good thing, but it's not the thing.
No.
It's not the thing. It's not going to fix everything. My kids both of them were going to charter schools when this happened. And so when people talk about school choice, that's what they think of. That's what most people think of, is charter schools. But, unless we have an education, what do you call it? Savings accounts, unless we're allowed education savings accounts, just like we should be allowed medical savings accounts, instead of having to get insurance, instead of having to send our kids to public school, we're not going to be free from this unless we're able to start hiring our own teachers and making it clear that we're not going to allow or tolerate any kind of wokeness. We're not going to. School choice is it's not going to save anything. As a matter of fact, let me tell you how bad the situation with school choice is. I went to the State Board of Education a few weeks ago. There's one school that was trying to get a charter in Texas. Now, our school board of education is primarily Republican. It's majority Republican. But the Heritage Academy, that has a classical education, was not granted a charter again. The schools that were granted a charter are all about creative arts. as if our kids need anything more to promote creative arts. These kids can finger pop and shake it and twerk it and all of that. All over the place. That ain't going to help them. That is not going to help them learn the stock market. That's not going to that is not going to teach them how to read the Constitution so they can know their rights. You know, those are the kinds of things that we're missing from our society. We had a person running for Congress do an upside down twerking in her drawers as a campaign ad. Seriously? That's what our society has become. This is what we're doing now.
Yeah. And, you know, we live in a reality when the National School Report Card says that 36% of people graduating from public schools know how to read. 33% of people graduating from public schools know how to write. 26% of the people graduating from public schools know how to do math. And when you add in the private school numbers, those numbers are not much better. And it's like, you know, I mean, the biggest problem we have too that people don't realize about school choice is that the problem is the teaching pool. It is the staffing pool. And the charter schools and the private schools are pulling from the same teacher staffing pool as all of the public schools. So even if you have unmitigated school choice, it won't even actually matter because those positions are still going to be staffed by teachers that are over 90% woke, indoctrinated into it in college, taught by people who were indoctrinated into it by their teachers. And so it's one of those things that it is a much bigger problem than school choice. And I think the Republicans, you know, they have a lot of burden to bear in terms of the blame of this. And by the way, I don't think that fighting for school choice is bad as an interim
It's not
step.
bad.
It's not bad. It's not, but it's not
No.
the ending point of where we need to go to. And
Right.
people need to start being honest about this. This school choice thing is not the end all be all. And I've even seen the same thing in New Hampshire where we had our Republican governor sabotage the anti-CRT bill last year, and this time around he refused to sign the parental rights and education bill. He was going to veto that, which would have given parents more insight into the classroom just to kiss the asses of the Democrats. And it's like, I guess the point I want to make is, you know, I don't think it comes as any surprise to anyone listening that the GOP is completely corrupt. They are not going to support the voters. They are not going to support the people. They're good people every now and again. I'm not going to say that it's 100% corrupt, but it's pretty corrupt. But I think where I start to get frustrated is when we have a populace who knows that their elected officials are not going to do anything, who knows how bad the GOP is, who knows that Ronna McDaniel doesn't do anything, and they still continue to give them money anyway. And it's not only that, it's that, you know, people have no problem paying $240 to the Daily Wire for a year of membership just so they can watch Matt Walsh's movie, and which, by the way, is only available behind the paywall. So I don't know how that movie is changing any minds, because the only people who are watching that movie are the people who paid $240 for a year of access to watch that movie, and they're perfectly willing to do that, and they're happy about that. But if you ask them for a donation, they're going to call you a grifter and like complain about the fact that you asked them for a donation. And that's where I start to really have a problem with it. I don't care if people, again, like if you want that entertainment value, if you want to laugh at, you know, what is a woman and have a good time with it, fine. But can we just do the real stuff too? Can we eat our vegetables before we go right to dessert? Because we can do both. We have the resources to do both, but people have to make the decision to do both.
That's true. I mean, nobody is saying stop watching Matt Walsh. You know, he's
I might
funny.
be saying that.
You know, well, she listen, is half crazy. So y'all just, hey, look, I'm not saying I'm not saying don't watch Matt Walsh. Although, I don't watch Matt Walsh, but I mean, I'm just saying if that's what you like, if you're into Ben Shapiro, watch him. You know, if you're into Megyn Kelly, watch her too. You know, watch the things that are entertaining to you, and pay attention to all of those things. But you know, you also have to accept and understand that the culture of our nation and society as a whole is not going to change or get any better by you watching and paying for a annual subscription to the Daily Wire or the Epic Times or the Post Millennial or any of those others. You're going to have to understand, everyone is going to have to understand that you are going to have to take an active role in fighting. And if you're too scared to do it yourself, then you need to then think about this. Add up what it would take for you to take a day off of work every 2 weeks to engage in activism, and then put that money with an activist and say, okay, that's what I'm going to buy my way out of this, out of my responsibility to actually show up and say, throw some money at this situation. Because honestly, there are people, I mean, when you look at people like Chris Rufo and Corey DeAngelis and James Lindsay, those people, a lot of the times they had to write a book to make the money to do the work. They didn't just have it.
Yeah.
The people aren't just, and they all have wives too that are supporting them as well. I mean, those are the kinds of things, and a lot of people don't know this, but there are activists out there who have had to quit left and right. I mean, there was one activist who, she was a powerhouse, and when she had to quit No Left Turn in Education, I was just completely despondent because she had to. She couldn't be an activist and support herself at the same time. And that's the reality. Quite a lot. When you look at the people who are actually on the ground, these moms, a lot of the people who are actually fighting, who are actually putting in the work, a lot of those women are married and they're supported by their husbands. Those are the kinds of things that you can do if you're in a position. But people like me, I was engaged. I'm not anymore. Because everybody is not willing to sacrifice as much as I'm willing to sacrifice for this fight. Yeah. Somebody else would have left the fight behind to maintain the relationship. But to me, this was more important.
Yeah. And I really think people need to hear this. This is something I've talked about every once in a while on the channel about how like the real activists are really quitting. There are activists dropping like the real ones that are actually making progress. They're dropping like flies because it takes too much time. It is a thankless task. You can't make any money doing it. And I think that all of those things could be mitigated a little bit if people would actually support the right people. I think if there was that financial support, and if you can't give a gift, I mean, of course, like the times are tough for a lot of people, and I think people understand that. But even if you can't give a financial gift, share what people are doing, like promote what people are doing, get it out there, go to a meeting, do so. There are so many things people can do that don't cost money, and they don't even do that. And by the way, like as someone who has now written 2 books, if you think that people get rich writing a book, I'm gonna tell you what, no, you do not get rich writing a book. That's not the way it works. And so even people who have big audiences, like James Lindsay is not a millionaire from writing cynical theories. He is not. That is not the way it works.
No.
But you don't do it for that reason. You do it to get the information out there, to teach people, and you do make some money in the process of doing it, but it is like a cost of living thing. It's not going to make you into a wealthy person. And I just really don't think that people understand this, that all of this costs something. Our freedom costs something. Fighting back costs something.
Yes, it does. And I mean, like I said, before we used to say that soldiers were sacrificing their lives and we support soldiers and all of that stuff. Well, now the threat is here at home. And why aren't we supporting the actual soldiers who are actually doing the grunt work to fight back? Why aren't we even becoming those soldiers? I mean, that is also one of the very frustrating things for me, is that, everybody in this country who has a child that has gone to school in the past 2 years, they probably have a lawsuit in their, they probably do, because their child has been given, I mean, all you have to do is look at libs of TikTok. You look at libs of TikTok, or you look at some of the other Twitter expose channels or accounts. You will see, teachers exposed. He was one of. I mean, those people show you all of those children that those woke radical teachers are teaching. They all have cases. And we're not just fighting the radical teachers and the administrators and stuff like that. We're also having to fight against the people who believe in this stuff, because like a lot of the times I hear, well, if parents just knew. Yeah, there are parents who do know and support this stuff, and to them it's a religion. It's a religion with them. You know, they believe that their child has two souls. You know, and they want their child's two souls to be accepted and praised at school. That's the kind of thing that we're having to struggle with. We're having to deal with. These people are captured. They're in a cult, and it is not easy to pull somebody out of a cult.
Yeah, exactly. Well, guys, we're talking with Gabrielle Clark, and if you have the means to make a donation to support her fight, please do so. It's givesendgo.com/support the Clarks. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. It is also in the description. Even if it's just $5, you're not missing that $5. You don't need that Starbucks coffee that costs more than that $5 anyway. Make sure you're making a donation to keep her in the game. I just want to take a couple super chats. We have the Brooklyn Way, Truard on Blast, Misused Idea Funds, Grant Funds, No Left Turn, U.S. Nancy Anderson, who's on Sloan's Education First Alliance board, published the findings. Insane. Thank you, the Brooklyn Way. And then we've got a couple super chats from Savrits. Savrits says the teachers have been replaced with zealots and hi. Hi, Savrits. It's good to see you again. And yes, absolutely. The teachers have been replaced with zealots. And then Savrits also said those losses of freedom is always under the guise of liberation. Same with the malevolence of government is always under the guise of philanthropy. I think that's exactly right, Savrits.
That's right.
And I appreciate that. Gabs, like one of the things I've thought about a lot, and I really thought about it a lot when I was writing the book, was about how like the IDW, essentially these famous intellectuals that for many years kind of went on each other's shows and they intellectualized about this problem, and I think that was an important exercise in terms of making more people aware of the problem, but for all that intellectualization about the problem, nothing really changed. It's not as though, and in fact, we can even argue that the problem got worse under the reign of the IDW when all these people were talking about it, then anything was solved. And I look at a lot of those people today, and those are the people that are being brought on the shows to talk about it. And those are the people that are, held up as some of the key people fighting back against this, when in fact, not only don't they fight back, the problem has actually gotten worse purely because, I would argue, of their lack of action, where they just want to talk about the problem all day, every day, intellectualize it, write books intellectualizing about it, make millions of dollars selling those books. Into some people do actually make millions of dollars selling books, and they're usually not the right people. But nothing ever happens. And I cannot understand why people can look at this situation and say, if we just trust the intellectuals, they will fix everything. The intellectuals got us into this problem in the first place.
Let me tell you something about that. And I'm going to be 100% real with you, and I'm going to smoke because, I fucking smoke.
I love it. Do it, girl. You've earned that cigarette.
Let me tell you something about intellectuals. And you know what? If you're an intellectual, just suck it up. What I'm about to say. The intellectuals got us into this shit because they constantly believe that that discussion is going to liberate us. They honestly believe that if they can prove how something is right, then the other side, whoever they're debating, will have no choice but to see their error. This is some stupid ass shit. That's just like saying, I'm going to rationalize with the rapist so he doesn't rape me. You're not going to be able to talk your way out of wokeness. I have a saying, I do not work with the woke. So anybody who wants to go and have a conference so they can all sit around and circle jerk about their books and pontificate on all of their do, you're working with the woke. You're letting them placate society. You're allowing it to happen. You're facilitating it. You do not work with the woke. So all of those people who go on the bro shows so that they can debate, and if you want to get on a stage and let's debate with Joy Reid, and let's, you know what I don't do? I don't debate. No, you are not going to indoctrinate my children. Them's the rules. And I don't care how you feel about it. That's what has to happen. And until our society gets to a place where they say, no, I don't care. I don't care all of your your ridiculous logic and your circular thinking, your gaslighting, all of that parallel language messaging would have people believe that an elephant can hang off the side of a cliff by his tail on a weed. That is not reality. And if you try it, that elephant is going to be a were, right? You cannot work with the woke. So all of those people with their PhDs and the MDs and their elemental Ps and all of that shit, if you get into a place where you think that some think tank or some foundation is going to put on this wonderful conference and everybody's going to come kumbaya, you are already captured. You're captured. And you need to wake up. Those people are not going to help you. They're not going to save you. You're not going to own the libs into stopping. You're not going to gotcha moment at a D'Angelo or a Kendi. This is their religion. They are a cult. They are trying to pull you in, and they will not take no for an answer. It is a practice in cult indoctrination. And no amount of rationalizing or reasoning or logic is going to stop that. They're using Maoist tactics. They're using Marxist tactics. This is the exact same thing that those people use to capture their cultures and ruin their societies. And they're using those exact same tactics on us. And if the people that are fighting this don't wake up and start disengaging with these people and telling them no, then we will fall.
Well, on that note, I want to bring up someone who actually was lucky enough to get on the same show as Ibram X. Kendi and completely wasted that opportunity, and that is the CEO of FAIR, Mr. Brian Bartning. And you know, I remember, and you know, we've done a previous stream about fair, so I don't want to spend the next, you know, I'm sure we could both talk about fair for hours and how it's a problem. But like I look at someone like Brian Bartning, CEO of Fair, gets on a show with Ibermex Kendi, has a chance to directly call Kendi out on every single damaging thing that Kendi has done in our society, and he completely just flubs the entire thing. And Fair is an organization that has the backing of almost every major influencer in the space, has tens of millions of dollars. Fair is the only organization that a lot of the really wealthy donors on the conservative side will even give money to. And Fair just last week sponsored a webinar. Well, I say sponsor, quote unquote, because it was a webinar about gender ideology. And apparently, Fair almost backed out of the sponsorship because Fair doesn't want to take a strong position on gender ideology. And Fair made the webinar presenters read a statement saying that Fair doesn't really support any of the statements made in this webinar prior to it being prior to the webinar happening. And Bayan actually wanted to back out of the webinar, I heard, but this was seen as the nice compromise because he didn't want to create a kerfuffle. And yet, this is an end. It is again an organization that average people are giving tens of millions of dollars to, wealthy donors are giving tens of millions of dollars to, and they aren't doing anything.
You know, so many of these organizations are sitting on the fence and doing this fence sitting that is helping. It's helping. And you can't be a fence sitter in this space. You have to actively take an active role in saying no. And you also need, and we didn't even talk about this, but you also need to recognize when your side is being co-opted by another even more sinister group. This is one of the things that I think is a problem in in the anti-woke space, because it makes people too afraid to take a hardline position. So, and I'll give you the example of that. So when Fair didn't, you know, when Fair was him hawing around about when they're him hawing around about the whole gender ideology, that's because, you know, a lot of those people are still part of the LGBT community, which is fine. But people in the LGBT community need to say, hey, look, we do not support what is happening. We support lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgender people. If that's what if this is their life and that's what they want, and that's what, fine, that's fine. But indoctrinating people into this, how you gonna tell an 18-month-old baby that they're gay?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is the kinds of shit that we're talking about. So it makes it practically impossible for a Fair to make a hardline position because they're too scared, because then they're going to be looked at as hate mongers. You can't be a fence sitter. You can support LGBT people. I've got a gay son, a gay daughter, and I'm bisexual. There's no, I dated a cross dresser for years. We would go and me, him, and my daughter would go and get our pedicures on Saturdays years ago. But you can't sit there and say, I have an 18-month-old transgender child. That is complete nonsense. You know, you have to recognize reality. The fact that one of our SCOTUSes got on TV and said she don't know what a woman is, even though she's had 2 babies and, you know, a vagina, to me just is like that is a problem. You know, Colin Wright is an environmental biologist and he does know what a woman is, but he's still being canceled. Mm-hmm. Just because he disagrees with the idea that a man can be a woman. There are people who are transgender who disagree with the whole idea that somehow we have to accept, everybody has to accept and be a part of the indoctrination process. Otherwise, they're self-hating. That is parallel language messaging. They're trying to co-opt you. They're trying to make you believe what they believe. You have to resist that with a hardline position of no. Right is right and wrong is wrong. This is not about the right versus the left. This is about right versus wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Tyranny is wrong, and it doesn't matter where it's coming from.
Yep. I agree. Let me go to some super chats, and then I've got one more thing I want to ask you about. Savra says, people can use the divine spark of intellect for good or for evil. Imagine if those intellectuals use the intellect to feed the right wolf with people. Definitely, Savrits. Thank you for that. And Sam says, Gabs and Carlin are inspiring people. I could talk forever about schools being corrupt, but more important is that people stand up and vote. Yeah, I mean, I think like the message I think that I really hope everyone is getting from this this chat is that you guys have got to stand up. You've got to stand up and do something, and you've got to be really thoughtful about what you're doing. You have to make sure you're supporting the right people. Voting Republican is not enough because the Republican Party sucks and has very few candidates that are actually going to do anything to help. Incognito says, keep rocking Miss Gabs and looking lovely, by the way. She does look great today. And then Warren, thank you for that super chat. I appreciate that. All right, Gabs, the last question I wanted to ask you just from the activist side, and Lord knows this has been a pet peeve of mine for definitely the last year, if not a little longer, is what are your thoughts on the infighting in the anti-CRT, anti-woke space that has been going on? Because to me, this makes it impossible. It's like when we are more interested in fighting people on our own team than we are in winning, that is going to make it impossible for us to actually make any real progress. Whether we're the real activists or someone else's, it's like we all have to have our eye on the goal. And if we're cutting the legs out from under the people who are working towards the same goal, that seems like a problem to me.
You know, I shut my Twitter down a few days ago for a few days because, you know, after the Roe versus Wade decision, that really did fracture a lot of what we had built. Because there are so many, I mean, especially with feminists and especially with you know, people who are against gender ideology, but who are also against abortion. You know, that is the reason why we should be so very focused on the goal. Because if people continue to engage in the infighting, we will fail. Because, you know, every single time there's a fracture in our in the anti-woke space, every single time there's a fracture, that lets in the doubt, and it lets in the confusion, and those are the kinds of things that we can ill afford right now. You know, so if you have a problem with an influencer, you know, take that to a DM and leave it there. And anybody who tries to make those things, hey, look, there's lots of people who are going to have disagreements on Twitter. They're going to have disagreements about the course of action, all of that stuff. But they still need to be supporting each other. The left does. You know, there's all of them have varying viewpoints and all of that stuff. But they still support each other when it comes time to go to work. And if we're not going to do that, then we're going to let them win by default. You know, I don't like seeing the vitriol coming from you know, from the major players in this thing. You know, I don't like seeing it. And what, for me, it's really upsetting because it's like they're the people that I rely on to get my message out when I need to. And so when there's a problem between the major players in this fight, and there's fracturing going on, it means that everybody below them that's working on this situation also, they all have to take a side now, you know, and you put us in a terrible position. This was the problem from the beginning. This was a problem from the beginning because we had people on the left who are classical liberals who really did not believe in the CRT indoctrination. But they're now, though some of those people are now wavering on the gender ideology stuff. We can't, indoctrination is wrong no matter where it comes from. The tyranny, is wrong no matter where it comes from. And if there is a disagreement in a course of action, okay, voice that disagreement. But sometimes you have to accept the reality of the situation. There's going to be moves that are made that we can't do anything about, but we can work together to fight them back. And we can work together to make a move ourselves. I cannot express to everyone enough how important it is that all of these players come together and stow away their garbage. Forget about what you think about Roe versus Wade. It's done. Move on. Forget about what you think about school choice. It's done. Move on. Go from there. We need to stop coming from a place of reacting to things and start being proactive about what our next move is. If we're all still stuck in the problem, how are we ever going to get to any solutions? So everyone who is out there who is warring with someone, stop and start working on the problem. It doesn't matter what that other person thinks or what they believe or any of that other stuff. All that matters is that we're working on the problem. However you feel that you need to work on the problem.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, Gabs, we've been going about an hour and a half at this point, and I want to start wrapping up. But I guess I want to ask you, what would make your life easier in this role that you've taken on? And at great cost to yourself. You've sacrificed so much to be in this fight. You've sacrificed so much to not settle this lawsuit, which you could have settled, I think, on multiple occasions now, but you didn't because you want to make sure we're getting that legal precedent that will impact not only critical race theory in schools, but also social emotional learning in schools. How can people help you? What would make your life easier?
Oh man, in any one of us, every one of us has this, a similar problem, which is funding. That's, that's by far the biggest issue and the most easily solved, I feel like.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, we'll throw some money at this situation so we can fix it. That's one of those things that anybody can do, but what would make it easier for me, I feel like, is if I were able to settle this case because 10 others sprouted from it, that would be the easy thing. Like, that to me is more important than taking it all the way to the end. Because I could take it all the way to the end and it still wouldn't matter, especially if people don't care about the law, if they're flouting the law anyway, right? So people need to start fighting back on their own. The people, I mean, and you don't have to take it to the place that we're taking it. If your child is being discriminated against at school, then file a lawsuit. They'll settle in a month, I guarantee it. And if your child is being indoctrinated at school, file a lawsuit. They will settle in a month. I've had more people who have had really great cases decide not to file a lawsuit because they're afraid. You know, you don't have to be like me and go all out. You can settle. You don't have to, and there are, Harmeet Dillon, she's ready. She's ready. She's hiring lawyers for you. If you live in California, especially, they're ready to start. I mean, some of these people are ready to start suing doctors and their parents and all of that other stuff for the gender ideology stuff. You know, if you have a case, then for heaven's sakes, find a lawyer and sue them. If you can't find a lawyer, if you don't know where to go for a lawyer, my DMs are always open on Twitter. And you can get in touch with me and I'll find you a lawyer. Start suing them. You know, I might be forced into a settlement. That's still a possibility. You know, hell, I might just get too tired to fight this because it's getting heavy, this burden. And not only that, but there's other things that need my attention, like my daughter. I mean, those are all real things that, unfortunately, this is real life, and some of the things need to be understood. But if a situation comes up where I can settle my case and still be able to fight, that might be something worth considering. Because those kinds of things need to happen. I think for other people to see, yes, you can. There was a guy who settled his case out of court and got $400,000 because he wasn't going to use pronouns. That was a college professor. I've told I don't know how many teachers, you have a lawsuit. Why are you not suing? There are so many teachers. And you know who this is that I'm getting? Gay teachers. Gay teachers who are not ready to come out to their schools are being told that they have to put their pronouns out. And they're being told that they have to disclose their sexual orientation. Why aren't you suing? That's EEOC 101. You don't have to tolerate that. You don't have to put up with that. You have recourse. So people need to start using their abilities, and they're using their freedom. Start using your freedom. And if you're too scared, well, for heaven's sakes, please start donating. Even if you don't donate to me, I would prefer it if you donate to me. But if you don't want to donate to me, there are plenty of other people who are fighting that you can donate to. There are plenty of organizations. I think somebody in the chat mentioned Sloan Rockmuth and Dr. Nancy Anderson. Let me tell you something. That situation with their superintendent Truitt, I was the one who blasted that video where they were teaching there was a video where they were teaching preschool special needs teachers some kind of DEI training where they were teaching them to recognize whiteness in their with their students. Like, really? The preschoolers, the blind 4-year-olds are racist? Is that what we're trying to say? That needed to I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? And when I put that out, Libs of TikTok picked it up, and one of the Board of Education in North Carolina saw it and went back. That was sent to me by Dr. Nancy Anderson. She sent that video to me of that DEI training, and I put it on Twitter. So there's all kinds of ways that you can help, but we really do need to understand that if we do not start throwing some money at this situation, then the people who are fighting are not going to be able to afford to do it anymore, or be able, it's not, because it's not a sustainable thing. There are a few people making good money off of this, but not many. And the people who are fighting the hardest, the regular people who you never see, those people aren't making anything. And they're quitting left and right.
Left and right. The real activists are dropping like flies. And what's going to happen when the real activists drop like flies is you're going to be left over with a lot of entertainers who might give you information but aren't really doing anything. And they are not going to come and save you. They are not going to.
I watched one of them tip. A parent walked up to, and I won't say who it is. A parent walked up to two speakers at a conference and said, "This is happening. What should I do?" And they said, both of them, they said pray.
Oh my God.
Let me tell you, man, I'm saying, I mean, yes, pray, but pray for a lawyer to come file a lawsuit on your behalf. That's what you pray. I mean, don't just sit. I mean, if you're hungry, do you just pray to God that your stomach will be full in the next 5 minutes magically? No, you go in there and you make yourself a sandwich. I mean, there's some reality that needs to be observed here. And if you don't fight, you're not going to make any difference.
You know, it reminds me of that story of like this older guy that gets caught in his house and there's a flood all around him. And he says, I'm going to pray. God is going to save me. I'm going to pray. And then a guy goes by in a rowboat and he says, "Old man, get in the rowboat." And this man says, "No, I'm a religious man. I'm going to pray. God is going to save me." And then another guy comes by with a helicopter and he drops the ladder down. He says, "Old man, climb up the ladder. We're going to save you." And the guy says, "No, I'm religious. The God loves me. I'm going to pray. God is going to save me." And the old man dies in the flood. And when he gets to heaven, he talks to God. He said, "God, I have worshiped you my entire life. I prayed so hard for you to save me. Why didn't you save me? What am I doing here?" And God says, "What are you doing here? I sent you a boat and a helicopter."
What more do you want? I mean, seriously, honestly, that's the truth, though. My aunt, one of my aunts, she's her name is Dr. Harriet Jarman, and she was an educator. She just retired, and she did everything she could to become an administrator. She was more qualified than everyone else, and she kept getting passed over. And we have our suspicions about why, but she really does believe that God sent me. She really does. She believes it. Her and my other aunt, who is her sister, but these are my mom's two sisters. One of them is Muslim, and the other one is Pentecostal Christian. Now, these are both hardcore in their religions, right? And both of them believe that God sent me. Two different religions, and they both believe that God sent me. If God sent me, then for crying out loud, help me fight them. I mean, if that's what it is, if that's what you need to get, you pray for it. I'm here. We're doing it. Let's go. I mean, if you're praying for help, the help is there, but you got to help the help along.
Exactly. Well, guys, if you want to help the help along, make sure you make a donation to Gabs's Go Send Give Send Go. It is pinned to the top of the chat. I see people saying in the chat that they're making donations. Thank you to everyone who's made a donation, even if it's just $5. If you can give more, that's great too. But we need to keep her in business. We need to support the people that are going out and sacrificing everything for all of us, and this should be a no-brainer. And once you share it, please share this video on your Facebook. Please share it on the Twitters. Please, I'm going to make a whole bunch of clips. We're going to share it everywhere. Every single, one of you is got to be responsible for sharing this out on your social media, making sure you're spreading the word, making sure you're telling people what's going on, because if we don't help and support each other, no one is coming to save us. We have got to step up. Every single person watching, every single person listening has got to step up.
Yes, they do. I mean, you really, really do. And if you need help, or if you want to help, you can always DM me. I am at Gabs Clark 5 on Getter, True Social, and on Twitter. And I also have a Facebook, but I don't remember that because I don't ever check my Facebook. I'm terrible at this, but you know, we're doing everything we can. And I mean, for the future, you know, as like I said, I still do owe my lawyer quite a bit of money, and I want to do everything I can to make sure that he gets paid off. But you know, but ultimately, what this money will be going to is so that I can finish writing this book. Because let me tell you something, there are children out there whose parents contact me and they do not know what to do about their children who are being indoctrinated at school into gender ideology. I've spoken with parents who have all of their children are identifying as trans. And like three, the most is three children, all three of her children are identifying as trans, her two daughters and her one son. I think she's in Scotland. But some of these things are still at a place that they can help their children. You can bring them back. I brought my daughter back. She had completely lost touch with reality, being captured by this cult. And I was able to bring her back. And I took the time to make a blueprint of how to do that. And I want to get that out to everyone so that if you have a child that's middle school or high school and they are starting to identify as non-binary, there are things you can do. You don't have to just accept it. You can fight back in your own home and bring your children back. Mm-hmm. So that's what this is going to be going towards, so that I can finish writing the book on that.
And that's going to be a critical resource for so many parents. Listen, guys, I want to make it really clear. I don't think either Gabs or I has any problem with anyone who's trans. We don't have any problem with anyone who's non-binary. You know, everyone should be able to live their best life. And if that's who people genuinely are, then that's great. And they should be loved and they should be supported and all of that stuff. However, if that's not what's going on, that's going to create a whole bunch of other problems that some of them could be irreversible. And so Gabs is one of the, and I know this embarrasses you to say this, one of the experts in the world on how to bring children back that have been indoctrinated into this ideology in schools, because she has lived it. She knows how to do it. She has created a blueprint that parents are already putting into practice. She is being sought out for her expertise, and she needs to write this book so that more children and more families can be helped, and every single person watching can support that effort.
Yes, and it does embarrass me to say it, because I'm it. That really, like, it's so weird that, but there's, and I don't have anything. Hey, look, Buck Angel is following me too. I'm cool with it. You know what I'm saying? Lady Maga? She's following me too. I don't have a problem with them. I don't have a problem with trans people at all. But when my daughter came to me and was telling me she was trans, we knew that was not correct. Me and my gay son were like, you've been a girl since you were born, honey. Like, there's no, and you really do have to get to a place in your mind where you say, okay, just because I'm okay with the LGBT community does not mean that I am okay with people being indoctrinated with something, with nonsense. That's not, if you're non-binary, fine. If you want to be two spirits or whatever the shit it is you want to be, fine, do that. It shouldn't be pushed on people in our schools. It shouldn't be taught as fact, as religion. It should not be taught as that. We shouldn't have that kind of thing in our schools, or at all. And it shouldn't be pushed as for the entire society to accept, or else. That's not, we don't do that for other things. What if Christians came to you and said, you either accept Jesus or else we're going to cancel you? Y'all,
Oh, I think
people
we
would
know what
be,
happens when you just look at my
yeah,
Twitter on any given day, and we'll see what happens when that happens.
that would be, I mean, that would be a completely, that's exactly what you have to think of this like. It's not a coming out story. It's not a coming out story. People, you don't, I mean, when you're talking about 5 and 6 year olds going to going to going to school and being told that they might be trans, that's not okay. That's something that their parents need to work out with them. And as a society, we also have to say, you know what, we're not going to continue to allow people to infect other people with a mind virus just because they believe it. It's not for you to say. Everybody has to make their own way and make their own decisions about their own lives. And I'd say the same thing to people who don't believe in trans at all or don't believe in homosexuality at all. Guess what? It's not for you to say. It's none of your business. If somebody is a grown adult and they want to, do what they do, this is America. They're free to do that. It's none of your business.
I agree. Well, Gabs, I just want to thank you for not only coming on the show today and sharing your story and sharing the truth behind, all of what's going on in the anti-CRT, anti-woke space, and giving people some more insight that they just don't normally get. And more than that, I want to thank you for everything that you've been doing. Like, you have been a fighter from the very beginning. I remember when you very first emailed me the slides of going on in your kids' class, and then you were determined to find a lawyer so you could sue, and you've just been like a pit bull in the very best way every single step on this journey. And I think that we would be lost without the work that you're doing. It's just like, it's irreplaceable. And I know that again, makes you a little bit embarrassed to hear, but it is absolutely the truth. And you are an example of just a normal person that stepped up when you needed to step up. And what I hope people really understand is that Gabs is no different than every single one of you. She is a single mom. She has struggles in life. She does, there was nothing that is like unique about her other than she stepped up when she needed to. And we need more people to step up. We need more people in the fight. We need more people to be doing things in their local communities. That's really the very best way that you can do it. That's why I wrote this book, to help people understand what they needed to do to fight back. And if we created 100 more people like Gabs from this interview, then we would be in a significantly better space than we are right now. So, Gabs, where can people get in touch with you if they would like to contact you?
I have, well, anybody can get in touch with me on Twitter. I don't even know if you have to be on Twitter to get in touch with me on Twitter. I have my link tree is posted on Twitter that has my email address. It has hey, look, and if you don't listen, a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to send you no money. And my Amazon is on there too. I need a desk. My Amazon wish list is on there. I need a desk. I got a chair. I'm using a chair right now as my desk. But yeah, you can reach me on Truth Social, on Getter, and on Twitter at Gabs Clark 5. I think I'm on Telegram and some of those other ones too. If you go to my Twitter page, my link tree is on there and it has all of my stuff on there. I think it's Linktree at Gabs Clark 5 as well. And you can also send me a donation at GiveSendGo/support the Clarks. I think yeah, there it is.
Yep.
Man, I'm looking old. Okay,
No,
I'm getting
you
old.
look great. You look great. You look great. I don't think you look old at all. You look awesome.
Let me tell you something. I don't get carded for cigarettes anymore. That wasn't the case a couple of years ago. But yeah, whatever. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, I mean, and I think I have a YouTube page too. I have a YouTube. I don't know where you got to look at my link tree. You got to look at my link tree. I'm just a regular old person I'm not a influencer in the traditional sense, you know what I mean? So if you go to my Twitter page, you can see my link tree, and it has all of the ways that you can contact me, and all the ways that you can donate. I also do buy me a coffee. I also have Patreon, all of those things. Yeah, so you can get in touch with me on any one of those. My DMs are always open on Twitter, and I answer every single one that is relevant,
Mm-hmm.
because
All right.
some of them aren't.
No, some of them definitely aren't. That's very true. All right, guys. Well, Gabs, thanks again for coming on the show today. I'm sure I will have you back in the future. I definitely want to have you back to talk about what you're doing with the book and the work you've done there, because I think that that's really critical. And again, thank you for everything that you've done. We so appreciate you, and I will make sure that I'm doing everything I can to support you. If nothing else, I will
And
create.
of
I
all
will.
of the people, hey, listen, I have to thank you, because out of all of the people, seriously, you've been with me since the very beginning. Since the very beginning, you were the only one who answered my email with an actual email that was, positive. It was a long and painful process, but we've been friends for this entire time. And let me tell y'all something. Me and Carlin don't agree on anything,
No,
practically nothing. But
Gabs
it
tells me
doesn't
off
even.
quite a bit.
Listen, come to the locals community.
When I need a stern talking to, this is the person that gives me the stern talking to, and God knows I need one every now and again.
It's funny. It's funny. I sit in the locals community, and we chop it up on a biweekly basis. And like I say, well, I'm just a regular old person. So um, we do talk about regular old things. So I like coming. It's my therapy. That's my therapy, coming to the locals.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Well, Gabs, let me pull you off the screen. I'm gonna do some shilling, and then we'll wrap up. Okay. Thank you again for joining today. All right, guys. Well, again, one more time, if you want to support the work Gabs is doing, please make sure you do. The link is in the description below. It's also pinned to the top of the chat. And if you want to come and join the Zoom calls that Gabs does attend very regularly, we were on a Zoom call until midnight last night. Gabs was talking a lot about what was going on last night. But you can get access to all of those Zoom calls and much, much more by becoming a member in my locals. It is kb.locals.com/support. We do Zoom calls on Mondays at 7 p.m. and on Wednesdays at noon. Sometimes they're spicier than others, but it is very much like a support group. People come to the locals not just to talk about what's going on in the world, but to talk about what's going on with their lives. I've got a great community of people who are going to have your back, who will be out there, promoting your stuff. I know so many members of my locals are tweeting about this right now. And so we really do help each other and support each other. If you want to get access to all of this and support the work that I'm trying to do, you can head over to kb.locals.com/support, and you can join for $5 a month. You can also join for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift. And another way you can support my work is, of course, by picking up a copy of the book that I featured Miss Gabrielle Clark in. It's called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. The hardcover apparently is on sale right now, and that's like a really good sale on Amazon. And there are some other hardcovers that are on sale as well that you can take advantage of. So pick up the hardcover on Amazon. It's also on Kindle. There's also an audio version. And if you become an annual member in my locals community, you are eligible to get a free customized autograph book plate to go right inside the copy of your hardcover book. So it's just like you have an autograph copy. This is not the last stream today I will do today. It is but the first. Please consider joining me tonight at 9:30 p.m. when I have our regular show with Joshua. Nothing remotely controversial. This is a fun show. It is a way to blow off steam and to bring a little levity into the situation. It's about news and what's going on in the world. And Joshua, who is a professional psychic, will use his psychic powers to help us try to figure out and predict what's going to go on. It's a great show. I hope to see some of you there tonight. And if I don't see you there, I hope I see you tomorrow when we have a really different topic on the show. We're going to be joined by Magister Bill M., who's going to talk to us about what the Church of Satan is, because I want to start having higher level conversations on the show, because here's the deal with my new Disenraged series is I really believe that we need to have a broader perspective. We need to understand what we're fighting for. And, you might not want to be in the Church of Satan, and I can certainly understand that. I don't anticipate converting either. But you know what? I want to know about the human experience and what that's like, and having the freedom to be able to do that, because that's what's amazing about our country. We have the freedom to be able to worship the way we want to worship, to be able to think about interesting ideas, to be able to do creative things. And my Disenraged series is a new show all about the human experience. It's on my YouTube channel, but I'm also getting it on all the major platforms in terms of an audio only podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google. That should be up now, but if it's not, it will be up in the next couple days. And so I hope you guys take advantage of this, because if we just sit in the mud all day, we lose our minds. We have to have a little bit of a higher level perspective. And that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow at 5 p.m. with our conversation with Bill. All right, guys, that is all I have for today. Well, at least for right this second. I will be back in about 2.5 hours. Take care, and we'll see you then.